Today on Ministry Monday, I'm speaking to Dr. Dan Girardot. Hi, Dan. How are you today?
Hi, Amanda. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you for
Good.
chatting with us on Ministry Monday today.
It's a delight to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm so grateful to chat with you on what I'm calling cantor considerations for larger masses. And we'll kind of really dig deep into that in just a minute. But before we do, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself for maybe those who are listening who don't know who you are, what you do in
Of,
ministry?
of course, I've been a member of NPM since 1984 and been on many boards and things. But as a minister of music and then a minister of liturgy, I started with music and went into liturgy after getting a master's at Notre Dame, liturgical studies, and then I became a spiritual director along the way, and then put all three, liturgy, music, and spirituality, into a doctorate in ministry at Catholic U. And so all of that has helped me to learn to teach better. I'm a clinician. I'm part of the Cantor, colleagues ministries. I help with adjudication, and but my job right now, full time, is as associate director for the Office of Worship for the Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston. After 40 years in Austin, Texas, doing ministry, I moved here where my wife is from, and she's very happy. And I'm learning how to be a part of the Houston environment. But I love what I do, and I love the opportunity to serve people and to teach about the ministries that we do and the spirituality for those ministries. But I love to cantor, and I'm a cantor teacher all over the country. So I just really enjoy doing that. I've been all over everywhere actually doing that. So I just did a cantor workshop on Thursday night. So I love this opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, well, good. I can clearly tell, just even from prepping from this interview, that you have the heart of a teacher. And so I'm really looking forward to digging into this topic. This idea, Dan, has been kind of rolling around in my head all summer, and I'm so happy to really, really flesh it out with you because, you know, cantor ministry is so important. We know this. It's such a visible way of ministry in our churches. But also with that, we also know as music directors, as cantors, as just music ministers in general, that every liturgy is different, but especially those who have special specific needs, whether that is size, whether that's music, whether that's the presence of a bishop. I mean, there are specific masses and other liturgies that really need a little bit of extra preparation and consideration for cantors. And so that's kind of where I want to start today. So before we really dig deep, can we kind of establish the paradigm that we're going to talk about today? So when I say larger masses, can we talk about what we're talking about, cantor considerations for larger masses? How are we going to define that today?
So let's define that as major holy days in a parish: Christmas Eve, Easter Sunday, Holy Thursday, even Good Friday, and other liturgies like that that are special feast day liturgies. A patronal feast day or a special dedication mass in the parish. An ordination, maybe you have a order that's working in your parish, and sometimes they have ordinations in the parish, a profession of vows, or any time there's a special, especially large assembly with some who are visitors, particularly. Large funerals. There's a very well-known person. We often have large funerals, and there's some special needs that cantors have for that. Masses with a bishop present, like a confirmation mass when there's normally not a bishop. Large first communions. Even if you've been asked to do a diocesan or archdiocesan masses. In our diocese, we go to parishes and the bishop comes and we do adult confirmations as well as parish confirmations. Yeah, but it's a archdiocesan liturgy. And then other special masses for conference events or large gatherings of people. That's what we're talking about today.
All right, excellent. I think that's a great place to start. So we're
Yeah.
looking at all these different types of liturgies that cantors minister at. Before we really talk about cantor considerations, let's kind of turn the mirror for just a second and say, as a music director, what are some of the things that you look for in a cantor when it comes to large masses?
As a director of music, I look for the first thing, which is Dr. Dan's ninth beatitude for music ministers and cantors especially. And here it is: Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. Remember that one, because it really comes in handy. So
Yeah.
you need a cantor that really has the spirit, imbued with that spirit of being flexible and not being bent out of shape, because of nothing else. We need to be flexible always in everything we do, particularly in liturgy and music. Also, to make sure that the cantor is very experienced in a variety of liturgical situation. For these large liturgies, make sure you have the well-trained cantor who's well-trained pastorally, musically, and liturgically, who understands the rite that you're doing and the rhythm and flow of the liturgy very well, and the ebb and the flow. Because remember, I had a pastor that once said, Dan, good liturgy is like flying an airplane. When you lose airspeed, you crash. So we move on and we transition. Our Cardinal Girardot, the former Episcopal moderator of NPM, is classic for that. He says, just let's move the liturgy forward and not have anything that gets in the way of the movement forward of the liturgy, so people can really pray it well. Also, one who's inquisitive and willing to speak up and clarify the order of the rites and the scripts and the music with the leaders, myself as director, or the MC, or the presider. Also, one who understands the principles of liturgical rhythm and flow, who's familiar with the community who's celebrating, familiar with the team of leaders, the ministers, and the facilitators of the liturgy, especially the style and the preferences of the presider. And that's important. If you know the presider well, if not, you need to find out. Be inquisitive. One who is attentive and on the same page as the music director, the accompanist, or the accompanists, if it's an ensemble, the people of God, all the ministers on the altar. And also, cantor needs to have a clear, simple, but visible gesture, and is clear about when to use them and when to omit them. Also, the cantor needs to be one who's extremely well prepared musically, really well organized. This is the other thing, with their script and the music unified in their folder or their tablet, and they can easily find it and see it. So they're not looking at 3 different things, right? You take the time to organize it with tabs and little sticky note, whatever you need to do to make it, and some people are not very, some people are OCD about that. It can really have to do that, right? But if you're not, if you're kind of like, oh, I'm cool, I can do that, I'm flexible. You can be flexible within a paradigm, and you really need to set those boundaries for yourself and really get things together so you can really follow. Find the cues. That's the key. One who's available for extra rehearsals and even liturgical walkthroughs before the day of the liturgy, as well as early enough to prepare, because there's always last minute changes the day of. One who has a personality that can deal with change and transition with ease, as well as the changes of plans at the last minute if needed. So remember the 9th beatitude, okay? One who has an excellent, pleasing cantor voice. Now, we have some great opera singers, but I've worked with many of them. And I remember one man in Santa Barbara, he was a doctorate in voice, an opera singer. He says, I spend 8 hours a week on my cantor voice and 16 hours a week on my opera voice. Fascinating, because he really was a fantastic cantor. He understood a little bit of the sotto voce voice and the even sound that you need when you're leading a congregation, and not being in their way and not overpowering them, and being clear with your text. So, and also prayerful, engaged presence with a sense of hospitality. That's the good cantor for a large group. Now, we also need those who might be there who may need to grow in some of these areas. Not everybody's going to be the perfect cantor, right? We all need to grow in certain parts of these areas. So that person could be one who would assist the principal cantor, and maybe be an intern with them, or shadowing them until they're more experienced. Because you always want to continue. I always say, I want to make sure that other people know how to do what I do, because if I get hit by a truck tomorrow, somebody needs to be able to do it the next day, right? So always have 2 and 3 deep leadership of strong, good, well-prepared cantors. And finally, and I would say this is number one, I ended with the most important. The cantor needs to be a minister with a deep spirituality and prayer, who loves the Lord, who loves their call to ministry, and is able to communicate that through their animation and through their presence and prayer and their voice.
Awesome.
Other
Okay.
than that, they don't have to do anything.
Just that's it.
Just be perfect.
Just be perfect. Well,
Right. Oh, that is an important thing, because we have this little thing in our minds that says it's always like, criticizing what we're doing as we're doing it. You need to take that little voice in your head and put it up on a shelf for the day. And whenever you make a mistake, you know that that's the only way you know it's real live liturgy, when you make a mistake. Mistakes are a part of it. If they're, that's the beauty of something that's really live.
Yeah.
There's nothing perfect, and there shouldn't be. That's only the heavenly liturgy. So put that voice away, make it connected with the people, and when things happen, just smile and say, that's exactly the way I thought I should have done it.
It's
Well, let
funny
them see you sweat.
it's funny you say that. I cantored a mass at our cathedral. It was a prayer service, actually. It wasn't a mass.
Yeah.
It was a prayer service for the war in Ukraine. And so the hymns that were used were a little more ecumenical, because it was an ecumenical prayer service across our city. And the ending hymn, so in general, like, I had to be on my toes more, because they weren't the typical, holy, holy, holy. And the closing hymn was a Ukrainian hymn that I was unfamiliar with. And I came in too early. I came in too early to bring everyone in. And so I gestured and I started singing, and I noticed that the organ was continuing to play a different intro than I thought. So all I did was smile and put my hands down and just smiled and waited. And I just thought, oh well. I mean, but I also didn't huff my hands down and go with wide eyes and have a serious face. I just smiled and then did it again when the time was right. So
and that was a part of the preparatory, introduction.
Yeah.
You were a part of the introduction. There you go.
Yep, exactly. So I mean, mistakes happen, like you said.
That's right.
It's not that
I made a mistake once in a parish liturgy on one of the very difficult verse of a psalm, and it was clear that I made a mistake. And afterwards, a lady said to me, I saw that you made a mistake, and that is so awesome. I'm like, why? Because, you're always perfect. And I didn't think I was really, able to kind of participate. But then I saw you made a mistake. I'm like, I can do this.
Aw.
I'm like, hey, God uses us no matter what happens.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Lovely.
Yeah, see the blessing in the challenges.
Exactly. Okay, so we've now talked a little bit about, like, maybe things that a director is looking for a cantor. What are some of the differences a cantor must consider while singing at a large mass? This could be all different ways.
I think if you go back to my answers for the music director, they're pretty much the same. Actually, all those things a cantor has to do. But I'll just clarify that for the cantor themselves. The cantor needs to start with musical preparation weeks before, and begin with the text, praying the text, getting the rhythm of the text, getting the proper phonation, proper vowel modifications, so that it's clear, understandable, the consonants, attacks, all those kinds of things, and then work on the proper melody and really get musically extremely well prepared. And I really recommend cantors working with either a vocal coach, a voice teacher, or your music director to do that weeks before. You don't want to even wait till the week before. You want to do this weeks before, so that by the time it's there, it's really second nature, and you've been singing this every day. Even make a recording of yourself to listen to yourself, and be prepared. Because at these large masses, if you're not super prepared, there's things that are going to happen, and they're going to distract you. And if you're not completely well prepared, it will cause issues for you. So also you can't really be present to people if you're desperately trying to search for the right note, or wonder what is the interlude? When do I come back in? What's my prep? When I breathe with the people, is it going to be an upbeat or is it going to be a downbeat? All those little things, right? Prep all of those and do it in front of a mirror so that you can see what you look like. Some places are huge, so your gesture must be large, right?
Yes. Yes.
Some places are smaller, so your gesture doesn't. But I really continue to invite people to think about their gesture as simply, it's your turn.
Oh,
And then
yes.
it's your turn. And I don't, this touchdown Jesus thing, be with me, Lord. I'm going to hold my hands up for the whole time. It's just not engaging. But if you
Yes.
reach out to people in a welcome home gesture and say, it's your turn, and give them a little bit of an ictus, just a little bit of an ictus, but the hands open, you can invite them with your body and your head. Years ago, one of my mentors was a man named Mike Hay. He was at the Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago, and he had polio when he was young, so he had braces. So he didn't have any hands to use. I mean, he couldn't use his hands, but he used his upper body and his face and his head in a way that was extremely welcoming and really invited people with his body and his face. So there's ways to do that, helping people to breathe and help them know when it's their turn. Another thing that's really important for preparation is to, if they have not invited the cantor to the rehearsal or walkthrough for the big liturgy, invite yourself. Find a way to get there. Find a way to make it time in your schedule to be there, because that's crucial. You just walk around with make sure you get a script and your music and walk through. And if you have any questions, be bold, be inquisitive, and ask. Pardon me, I'm not as familiar with this, so forgive my ignorance, but do I do the litany of the saints from the cantor stand? And are there any other additional saints? Are there any other, like for an ordination, the litany of saints is different than it is for a Easter vigil, and it is for something else. So those are the kind of questions you need to really engage with when you're walking through. Also ask the music director, what is the preference for the presider? Would we extend this? What happens if there are still things going on and we finish the music? Will the accompanist just continue? Will we go back to verse 1? And will there be interludes between? How far? There's so many things that you need to check before. You really need to walk through every part of the Mass. And if your music director is not used to doing that, ask for it. If your presider and MC are not used to doing this, ask for it. And if nothing else, set up a separate time to talk with them if you need to. That's crucial. Whenever you have that kind of liturgy, there's many issues that come up. Many different rites have, like for instance, for a confirmation, do I actually sing into the mic? And use of the microphone is crucial. You don't want to overwhelm people. You need to back off when they're singing their parts and they know it well. You might need to give them a little leadership if you're singing, let's say, a chant for a dedication of a church. Or if you're singing with the choir, you just back off and just bring them in and look engaging. But it's important that they get a sense of you supporting them. And you have to listen. And if they're struggling, lean in a little bit. And then once they get it, you can back off a little bit. So the other thing to do is, besides prepare pastorally, liturgically, and musically, is to prepare in prayer. Really pray those texts as you prepare for the liturgy. Make them a part of your daily prayer. So by the time you sing the psalm for one of these things, you're not just singing a psalm. You're singing your experience of God's inbreaking into your life through these words and what God has done for you in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks through this prayer that you've been praying. And so you're communicating, you're proclaiming this amazing thing, just like lectors should do that. So those are some specific things that cantors should do to prepare for a large Mass. And if you think that everyone knows something, that everybody knows the acclamations, think again, because they're going to be visitors and they need the support. Also, please ask to find out where the resources are for the people to see the notes and the music. Maybe they have to look through every part of the hymnal, or maybe there's a worship aid, but you need to find out and make sure that you say, well, they don't have that. How are we going to ask them to sing it if they don't have it? So it's an important thing. The music director should be doing that, but if they're not, then Cantor can instigate that a little bit. Full conscious active participation.
I'm so glad you said that though, because I think it's a good place to transition, because I like that you said, if you assume that everyone knows an acclamation, think again. I'd love to spend just a second talking about any specific considerations when someone is cantoring, let's say a large mass, when there is a large group of people present who may not regularly attend church. So namely, let's name it, probably weddings and funerals.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so what are some of the cantor considerations when it comes to those types of liturgies?
So when you're with new people who are there for a wedding or a funeral, I would see if the presider and the family would be okay. And actually, really, your presider, because the family should be okay with whatever you decide. If you could do a moment of leading and helping people to be familiar or with the music at Mass. And so you find one, let's say one refrain, a psalm, maybe the Glory to God refrain, if it's an order of Christian marriage or matrimony, or if it's a funeral, maybe the refrain to the Song of Farewell, and then use what I call my 3x5 method. It's basically everything that you do should be written down on a 3x5 card. You should do the responses and ask people to sing them and repeat them about 3 to 5 times so they really get it. And then have it no longer than 3 to 5 minutes long. And do this at a wedding, probably like 15 minutes before, because they have all the nice things that you want to do before. And then for a funeral, you could probably do it right before. But really invite people, be engaging and be welcoming, and say, good morning, we welcome you. Before we begin, let's look at our worship aid or in the hymnal, and we're going to sing this today. And to give you familiarity, here's how it goes. So when it's sung, it sounds like this. And you sing the small part, glory to God in the highest. And then they come in on a very short part, glory to, with the accompanist playing under you on just the melody line. And then you sing the second snippet, and on earth peace, and then you have them repeat it with the accompanist playing. But you do it a cappella, have the accompanist give you the pitch. And then you do 2 segments together. You sing it both together, then they sing it. If they're looking at the notes and looking at the music and you're leading them, they'll get it pretty quickly. If you keep, the thing that I see when people practice is they're in a hurry and they do the whole thing, then ask everybody to do the whole thing. And you've lost them after the second measure. I mean, they just can't do it. So I recommend that at the beginning of a funeral or a wedding, of the 3x5 method. If you can't do that, at least invite them to participate in the singing and the prayers by looking at their worship aid and sing as well and as strongly as they can. And if I always try and say, and if you don't feel you sing well, then sing louder, because the person next to you will sing louder to sing over you. Or make a joyful noise, according to Psalm 150. So I really encourage people in a more of a humorous way to participate in the prayers and the music. And that's important. So if they're given the permission to do that, and they have something in their hands that helps them, that's the other thing. You have to make sure they have something that is usable in their hand, even if it's a sheet that says, here are the numbers of everything in the liturgy, even the Alleluia, even the parts of the Mass. One of the things that always is difficult when I'm going around to the diocese is they assume that everyone knows what Mass parts there are. I want to find out. I want to open the book and I want to find it. So I'm a musician, so I go through and I take about 30 seconds to try and find the right one, and then I can participate
Yes.
if I don't know it. So I really encourage that for weddings and funerals and any other liturgy, particularly Easter and Christmas. And this is the opportunity. Funerals, weddings, Christmas and Easter are the liminal place for people who are coming there because of grandma, or coming there because they've been invited for, whatever reason. And if they have a great experience, and they have an experience of full conscious active participation, and it's joyful and it's welcoming, and they can follow along to even see the Lord be with you. I haven't been to church in 20 years, and also with you. Okay, so they need to know where to find the right words and with your
Right.
spirit.
Right.
So those are the things that I would recommend for a large mass that has a lot of visitors. Also be aware that the sound system may be horrible. So I speak quickly, but when I do this with people, I am declamatory with great consonant explosion and with a rhythm that is slower and allows for an echo or the ambient sound to make it to their ears. You hear the pace that I just did, a change of pace, right?
Yes.
When
Yes.
we do that, people get it. Early in my years, I would go through things so quickly, people didn't understand what I said.
Mm.
And I was always worried I was taking too much time and all that. So I really recommend practicing the introduction in front of a mirror before you do this. People don't practice that, but they should.
Yeah, they should. Absolutely. We've talked about visual cues, of course, as a cantor, inviting gestures, but we haven't talked about one scenario that I want to talk about, and that's what if a cantor, an accompanist, like what if there are poor sight lines in a church? You talked about sound systems, but like what if there are challenging sight lines in a church? What to do with that?
There's twofold: sight lines and oral challenges. So
Yes.
we have a block and a half long cathedral, and when the cantor's up front and the organ and the choir is way back in the back. If you know anything about bands, marching bands, sometimes the marching band on one end of the field and the marching band on the other end of the field will get off out of sync.
Yes.
And they call it a band shear. So you've got things like a beat or two behind or in front of each other. So like they're sheared apart, and it's really hard to get them back on track, right? And this often happens in liturgies where the cantor is singing loud into the mic and the choir, who's maybe mic'd or maybe not, and the organist in the back. And in the middle, there's like two different tempos, so nobody knows what to do.
Yes.
They have this particularly at the Mormon Tabernacle. Mac Wilberg, I talked to him once, and he said, what's in my ear and what the orchestra hears, and then what the 600 singers back there hear are all three different places. So I have to learn how to conduct, I think he said 3 beats in front of what I hear in my ears.
Wow.
Can you imagine doing that? So cantors usually, if they're in that situation, should back off, because the back of the church where the organ and the choir, they will prevail. The congregation will be at a different tempo anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But your job is to use your gestures to bring them in and make sure you have the right timing. Often in our place, it's so far away, it's really hard to see that person.
Yes.
I saw a football game this weekend against Notre Dame and Texas A&M. And for some of these guys that do the hand signs on the sidelines, they had somebody standing behind them with a white sheet so they could actually see the
Oh,
signs.
interesting.
But when you're looking way up there, you can't see. When they're looking down there, you can't see. So sometimes you really have to talk about, okay, when this happens, this right,
Yes.
what are our cue? What are the cue lines? And particularly at the end of things, like during the preparation of the table, that's one of the soft spots of the liturgy. The other time is at the end of communion. That's another soft spot. So you have to know, does the presider like to do all the cleaning of the vessels and then put it, or does he like to just send them off and have them cleaned later and then prepare
Right.
to stand up?
Mhm.
And the director needs to know that, but the cantor needs to find out what the director's going to do, and then act accordingly. So if there's bad sight lines, it's really important to have a better communication and some kind of cue. If you have hand signs that can be seen, so sometimes I'll do this for the last verse, like fourth down, right?
Yes,
Um,
me too.
uh, oh yeah, yeah. It really, I think you can see that, but it has to be like front of your face or your body or somewhere. If you do it
Yes.
up here, sometimes you can't see it.
Hmm.
The other thing that you can do is, I've seen this. It's just not a good sign in,
Yeah.
in
Right.
liturgy,
Yeah.
right?
Maybe
Right.
not that one.
I've also seen that this means top of the liturgy. You know, I mean, top of the song,
Yeah.
right? I never got that. I would do this, you know,
Yeah.
verse 1,
Yeah.
verse 2, ending, right?
Yeah.
But if you can't see them at all,
Hmm.
then you might engage an earbud with a two-way radio.
Hmm.
And I've seen that work in many other situations. So
Cool.
you could, and two-way radios and earbuds are not that expensive.
Hmm.
So you can communicate that way with your director, but only one,
Hmm.
because you need to listen out of the other ear.
I'm going to propose one
Yep.
too that you could
Okay.
use if you're watching the episode, you have an advantage on this because we're talking about visual cues. But Dan, I'm going to give you one that we use at the church where I was director of music for
Oh,
13
good.
years.
Okay.
And so I'm sure you know this already because I feel like I talk about it all the time. But the church I used to be director at before I was working for NPM full time was bilingual in that we were the
Yes.
home for the deaf in Pittsburgh, actually. And so we used an ASL sign to indicate that we were ready. So that instead of like or anything very dramatic,
Yes.
it was easy to see, but it also was a little bit more of a prayerful looking gesture. So I'm going to show you what it is, and you're going to learn a quick sign too for sign language. So the sign for ready is actually if you're crossing your fingers, kind of like, yeah, like good luck, right? And then you sweep them away from your body up towards the air. This is ready. This means ready because this is the letter R in sign language. And then you gesture away. And so my priest could do this in the back and it doesn't look like, field goal or it doesn't. So ready. And that was just such a nice way also to, of course, implement some sign language from a community that is, deaf and hearing. But I also have liked that too because I just think it's a very gentle sign that you could use in certain situations to say, we're moving on or whatever it is.
Yes. So I love that. And I've actually used this R for repeat,
Oh, perfect. Yes,
but
exactly.
I don't know if that is repeat in sign language. But I use the R for repeat.
Yes, repeat, same idea. Yeah,
It's the same
exactly.
idea,
Hmm.
because the R for ready, I love that. I didn't know that, and
Yeah,
but
this is ready.
I've always used repeat,
Yep.
um,
Hmm.
but I love that. That's a really great sign. It also is a gentle sign.
Yes, it's a gentle sign. Exactly.
Yeah,
Up
and
and
we have
away.
hearing
Nice.
impaired people. I've worked with over the years. We had every summer we had choir camp, and
Mhm.
we taught all the kids the American Sign Language for many of the songs that we sang, because we had a woman who was deaf who was our like support person who took care of the little babies of the leaders, and so her daughter, a really fantastic singer, uh, taught us all the sign language, and my
Mm,
sister's an ASL interpreter as well. So we
nice.
learned this, and also sometimes had the songs beautifully uh, actualized through more evocative sign language,
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
beautiful.
Exactly. It
Yeah,
is. But I'm sorry.
yeah.
I go back to
Lest
what
we
you were saying. I
digress.
wanted to mention that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to cover that we haven't covered yet?
There are many things that we teach when we do cantor, um, beginner cantor training. I did with Bertha a number of things with LTP a few years back, and NPM. But when we have intermediate and we also have advanced, and in some of these things, it's the animation gestures that are in your face and your presence that are very important, but also an eye contact and how you follow words and music with your hand, so then you can look up and have eye contact. So it's important that you take your hand, like, third grade, Mrs. Mosby told me to stop using my finger, right? Well, I can start again, okay? But use the whole hand. For lectors, they just move down the line, and same with cantors. So when you look up, your hand will be, when you look back down, on the next line, on the next note. That way you can have that presence, but you need to write in where you're going to look up in the music. People don't really take that time to do that. But if you do, then you'll be more comfortable knowing when to go up and look at people, and when to come down, and also when to prepare with their breath between a verse and the refrain. Another thing is being inviting and being a part of the community before and after, and connecting with people in hospitality, even after the liturgy, because they need to see you and get to know you, and you will be a familiar face to them, just like the presider is or the lectors are. You will be a person that they can relate to and encourage their active participation. That's why it's important to have a cantor up front so people can see it. There's a tendency and a trend going on in the United States of people of a disembodied voice coming from the balcony, singing the psalm or singing the verses to the gospel acclamation, all those things. And it's almost as if, think about this. Would we have a lector go up to the balcony and read the first reading without seeing their face?
No.
So I really think that it's an uncomfortable trend that I think we need to kind of get the word out. And then one last thing is help. I think we need to help our cantors realize that they are a visible sign, a sacramental sign in a sense, in the small s sacramental sign of the Church of Jesus Christ, an extension of those who are unchurched or are new to the church, or have gone away from a long time. And your welcome, your presence, your hospitality, and your invitation to them can truly be a transforming experience. And some people may be back to church after being away for a long time, and maybe have been looking for something that's missing in their life. And you can be that opportunity for them to re-engage. And if you're around afterwards and begin to talk to them, they might mention that. Then you can help guide them and lead them toward your faith formation folks. That's my ending. But reminding that we all need the 9th beatitude. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape.
I wish I could change the title of the podcast at this point, but that one is maybe a little too long. But
it is.
But that's a perfect way to end. I'll end the way I started. Clearly, Dan, you have the heart of a teacher. Your points are so well received, and I think even someone who is not doing a large liturgy would benefit from listening to this, but especially those who have, the particular challenges of larger, unique liturgies, or just, atypical liturgies would really benefit from all this. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your reflections and your wisdom with us. And thank you for taking the time to chat with us about it on Ministry Monday today.
It's a blessing to me, and it's a privilege to be able to share my faith and my call to ministry, and hopefully to inspire others to do the same, because we need you in the church. We need you, and we need you to grow. I still take voice lessons, and I've been doing it for all this time. Continue to grow. That's the key.
Amen. Amen.